Like it or not, the 80s were cool. Madonna and Prince were at the height of their success, and big hair wasn't just acceptable, it was encouraged. But a very special thing happened in February of 1989. The Mazda MX5 was born. It all started with the first generation Mazda MX5, the NA. It had an 85 kilowatt, 130 Newton meter, 1.6 litre engine up front, rear wheel drive, and it weighed under 1,000 kilograms. It was affordable too, with prices starting around the $29,000 mark. Since then, the Japanese soft top has evolved through several generations, well and truly cementing its title as the world's best-selling two-seater sports car. And now, 26 years later, Mazda has launched the all-new fourth generation MX5, the ND. But how does it compare to the original? Here to help us decide is the owner of the NA you see behind us, Nick Bodie. G'day Nick, how are you?
Good, thanks Dave, how are you?
Very well mate, you happy to take us for a few laps?
Absolutely, let's go for it.
So Nick, can you tell us a little bit about this car and how you came about getting it?
So about the car, it's a 1989 MX5. It's the 38 that was brought over to Australia. It's also a genuine Mazda MX5, not a Unos Roadster.
Yep.
So it wasn't imported by anyone, it was brought over by Mazda. It's a 1.6 litre 5-speed manual, which is the best way to have it. It's completely original other than the roll bar, as you can see behind me.
And the wheels, yeah?
They're just taken off a slightly later model NA, just with the intention of bringing up the look of the car so it's a little bit nicer.
Was the MX5 a car that you always had in the back of your mind, or was it a family thing that kind of steered you towards it?
I never really heard of them until Dad's friend recommended it. He's a car collector.
Yep.
So he has his own 1990 MX5, and the idea was to have a two-seater car that I can drive on my red Ps.
Yep.
That way I'm not pressured into overloading. It's not too powerful, so I'm not going to get myself into too much trouble.
Yep.
And because it's a 1989 model, I can put it on club registration if I'm not driving too much. And the other benefit was that it's more likely to appreciate in value than depreciate, because it's less common that there's such good models out.
It's good to know that you're smarter than I am. That's reassuring. Now that you've owned it for a little bit, do you have a favourite thing about the car, if you can narrow it down to just one thing?
Definitely the pop-up lights.
Yep.
Yep, by far.
Why is that?
It's different. Like, there's not many cars that have them around. It's something unique. You can do the flash to pass, where every time you flash the high beams, they pop up and down.
Yeah.
It's quite amusing to see the look on people's faces while you do that, especially like kids. I've got a lot of young cousins, so I find it quite amusing.
Adds some character, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I've got to ask the tough question, is there anything about the car that you don't like so much?
It's a short nose crank, which
Yep.
was fixed shortly into 1990, but the short noses are prone to failing with their crank wobble. Thankfully this one doesn't have any wobble yet at 206,000 kilometres.
Yeah.
But we'll see how it goes. But that'll be the only thing I dislike about it. Other than that, it's a brilliant car.
Should we pull back in and jump into the new one? You can feel that one out?
Sure.
So jumping in this and out of your old car, what are your first impressions? What do you immediately feel is different or similar?
It's a lot more powerful. Definitely a lot more comfortable in the suspension and the seat.
Yep.
Steering's a lot different. Sort of more got to follow through with every movement, whereas the NA is a lot smoother and less adjustment needed. Like it will follow through the corners like it's on rails.
Is there something that you notice straight away that you prefer in this car compared to your car?
Definitely the luxury of the comfort. And then from that, the more power, but then again, the MX5 isn't all about the power, it's about what you can do with what power you've got, so.
Yep. Does it still feel MX5-y to you is the most important question. You're our MX5 expert, you've got the NA, this is what this car is all about, is kind of getting back to that heritage. What's your call?
Definitely still feels like an MX5. It feels more refined than the original, I guess, but considering that there's 26 years difference between the two, it's expected, obviously, as a newer car, it's going to feel a little bit different, but For a new MX5, it definitely ticks all the boxes of the perfect cornering and the 50-50 weight ratio, so it's still a great MX5.
So if you had to have two cars in your garage, would you have the old MX5 and the new one?
If I could afford it, yes.
You wouldn't swap this for the old one?
No. I'd think about it. But
do you miss looking over the bonnet and seeing the pop-up headlights?
it is quite useful when gauging where the front of the car is, especially in parking and daily driving. But it is good to have no distraction as well by having just a flat bonnet. So
this is an important question because, believe it or not, I've never actually driven an NA first generation MX5. Are you happy throwing me the keys for a couple of laps?
Absolutely.
Yes. Let's pull into the pits and I'm going to jump in your car.
Alrighty.
Well, we kicked Nick out and we're going solo, and this is my first ever drive of an NA MX5, and I'm a little bit excited. This is cool. He was so spot on that the view out the front with the pop-up headlights, just, you know instantly what car you're in just by looking out the front, and few cars can do that. The steering's definitely heavier than the new car, but it kind of gives you nice feedback and it loads up really well. There's that awesome exhaust noise, engine noise that you can just hear. And it just sounds great. It's definitely louder than the new car, but it just adds so much character to it. The brakes still feel nice. There's no ABS to join the no power steering and no air conditioning. But everything's just immediate and direct. The throttle response is actually really good. That notchy gearbox is just the best. Such a short throw, matches the clutch perfectly. It's a car you just want to keep driving. You don't have to necessarily drive it fast, but you just want to keep driving it. I don't think I'm going to give it back to him. It feels light too. It changes directions well. It lets you know it lets you know what it's doing all the time. It is so much fun. All right, we should probably bring it back before Nick gets too worried. Thanks so much for that, Nick. That thing is awesome, and thanks again for coming along today.
It's been my pleasure, Dave.
The Mazda MX-5 was originally conceived to be a lightweight, affordable sports car built for people who not only love cars, but love driving. And while subsequent generations may have strayed somewhat from the original, the experts agree the all-new 4th generation is a welcome return to form.